Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Karen Doyle, Operations Director of CTAM Europe. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. You're in for a treat today with today's virtual discussion with the fabulous duo, Maria Rua Aguete, Head of Media and Entertainment at Omdia, and Jonathan Broughton, Research Director at PlumResearch. I'm sure you'd know both of them already from industry events and from past webinars that they've kindly done for us at CTAM Europe. We're scheduled for 30 minutes, which also includes time for questions. So please post your questions by using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. As always, the recording of this presentation will be posted on the members only section of ctameurope.com. If you're not a current member, please email info@ctameurope.com for more details. Members have access to an industry webinar a month, webinars and podcasts from our colleagues across the pond at CTAM US. And we are also invited to apply for the week-long Executive Management Programme at INSEAD. I'll follow up with more details about the programme in a couple of days. Maria and Jonathan will have access to the registration list and may follow up with their own news separately. So now, thank you for joining in, and I will pass you over. Thank you. Enjoy.
Thank you, Karen. And hello, everyone. I am Maria Dolores Rua Aguete. I feel a bit like Bad Bunny, and I was planning to do the whole presentation in Spanish, but I changed my mind and it will be in English this time. So thank you everyone for being here. I have lots of new data in this deck. And I think, Jonathan, I put here your name because you are not Omdia, you're PlumResearch, but you have also, I believe, insightful insights. What are you going to be talking about later?
So I've chosen to dive a little bit deeply into the vast Plum datasets, and I'll be providing sort of three key investigations that I think are really crucial for understanding how consumers are currently interacting with content, and actually some of the strategies that we're seeing from major players at the moment. And I think you're going to touch on that as well.
Fantastic. So let's start because, as I said, there are so many things happening even today, lots of breaking news. So I'm going to be talking even faster than usual, discussing where is the money in media and entertainment, what are consumers watching at the moment, and partnerships and bundling so important now more than ever. So how was 2025? 2025 in terms of revenues was a great year. We reached $1.1 trillion in revenues across all media and entertainment, most coming from video. Video represents 70% of all media and entertainment. And as you can see here, online video, almost 500 billion. So in 1 year, 2024 to 2025, $70 billion growth, 64 of which came from online video. These are really big numbers. So what are we expecting this year? Even better, this year is going to reach 1.2 trillion. How is possible so much growth when there is consolidation, when people are losing their jobs? Well, people are spending more and more consuming content. Lots of new formats like microdramas and others. Lots of advertising revenues from new brands that they didn't advertise before. So yes, 2026 will be even better in terms of revenues than 2025. A lot will come from streaming and inside streaming advertising, followed by games. In terms of the big leaders, Netflix it is today and it will be in 2030 the biggest player by far in terms of eyeballs. If they end up merging with HBO, which has such an amazing catalog, it will be a very powerful combo, very difficult to compete against. Viewing trends. This is our new consumer data. We just had this data a couple of weeks ago. When we look at every single device, tablets, mobile phones, set-top boxes, YouTube, yes, it comes as the #1 service, but as you can see there on those 4 countries, US, Mexico, Brazil, Spain, is because most of that content, in the case of the US, is watched on the iPhone, in Mexico, Samsung TV, but when including mobile phones where people watch so much content, YouTube comes #1, and then there are other players It can be Amazon, Instagram Reels, Netflix. It depends on the country. But when we look at the TV set, YouTube is no longer number one. Yes, a lot of people watch YouTube on the TV, but the number one service in the UK, for example, is not YouTube. It's Netflix, it's BBC iPlayer, it's Amazon Video. It is not YouTube. I will share these slides with you later, but just to highlight that point. We just finished a report about YouTube, and it's very interesting, the findings we see in YouTube. There are already more than 30 billion videos in YouTube, but only 1% of those videos get 91% of all the views. So there are many videos there that maybe nobody watch, or 1 or 2 people ever watch those videos. And I found very interesting in this report, that again, contact me if you want to have access, how this, after English, it's Korean, the most popular language of videos being watched in YouTube. Yes, number 1 is English, number 2 is Korean. And 81% of those videos are music videos. Again, not a surprise, but also a highlight of how powerful Korean content is across SVOD, across FAST, and across YouTube. FAST trends. Advertising is very important, including FAST. FAST in 2025 reached 6 billion. But as you can see in this chart, although 6 billion is a very important figure, $6 billion in revenues, is already below all the revenues that HBO Max had in 2025. So all the FAST channels in the world, 6 billion is an important number, but most of this comes from the US. And overall, compared to other streamers, it doesn't seem that big. And that's why we are all talking about microdramas. Microdramas already is double the revenues, all the FAST channels in the world, 11 billion at the end of 2025. So when people say, I believe in microdramas, I don't believe, there is nothing to believe or disbelieve. The numbers said that is already double all the revenues FAST channels get. Saying this, we're expecting growth. Yes, FAST channels will still growing, double in the next 5 years, with a lot of growth coming from the US. Famous microdramas. Probably most of you already know, but yes, it's those 1 or 2 minutes episodes, vertical video, watch on the mobile phones. And I just put there a piece of content that I watched during Christmas. I am the lady boss. I got the advert via Instagram. I watched some episodes for free. And then, yes, I paid because I really wanted to watch this content. Smartphones are now the most popular video device to watch content. So it's not a surprise, since people are so used to watch Reels, to be in Instagram, to be in social media, that is the place to watch this kind of short vertical content. And as I said, it reached 11 billion, most of which is from China, 85%. But look at the US, 9% of that 11 billion already coming from the US. We are expecting a lot of growth outside China in 2026, 3 billion to be distributed around the world. I was with Jonathan in Content Americas, and I will ask Jonathan what he thought, but I was very surprised to see how all the big players there, like VIX, like Televisa, Globo, they're all launching these microdramas, mini telenovelas, novelinas as they call it in Globo. At the moment, they have that content available, consumers are loving it. Monetizing that content is the next big thing, how they should advertise this content to their users. Also, something that you may not know, many people think since it's in a mobile phone, this content is to attract millennials. It's not. Well, they also want to attract millennials, but it's women between 25 and 50 who are paying right now to watch that content all around the world. And as I said before, I was watching myself that content that came via Instagram. Then I did pay coins to finish some of those episodes. With coins, it was not enough. So I was hooked to pay a weekly subscription of £7 a week to finish I Am the Lady Boss. So it is a very clever technique. It's hook, it's addictive content. Marketing money is a lot here. So maybe the TV series is 100K. the marketing can be 1 to 10 million via platforms like Instagram, YouTube, or TikTok. And it is shocking in the US how much time people are spending already watching these microdramas. Look at Real Short, 35, 70 minutes a day, more than Amazon Prime Video, more than Netflix, more than Disney. So when people say, I do not believe in microdramas, I don't know what they mean. Funny question, but a reality. Will Netflix buy a microdrama app? They seem to be in the mood for buying companies. So I do believe they may end up buying one of these microdrama companies. They want to grow in the mobile phones. They want to get people hooked not only in the big screen, also in the mobiles. Finally, partnerships. Partnerships, they will be more important than ever. Last year, we saw so many partnerships with broadcasters and streamers. I was in Dubai when I witnessed in Abu Dhabi this partnership between Stars Play and Abu Dhabi Media, and we will see more and more these partnerships going forward. We talk a lot about telco streaming partnerships, but there are many others coming. Like, for example, it's very interesting banking partnerships. Go to this bank and we will give you a streaming service. This, as you can see in this chart, is very powerful in Latin America, in Brazil and Mexico. Lots of banks give you a streaming service as part of a banking deal. And big topic today, we know HBO is launching in the UK as a standalone service, but Sky was very quickly to react, like, do not leave us, stay with us, because we're going to bring you together, Netflix, Disney, and HBO Max, at a better price that you will get if you subscribe individually. Obviously, it's a must doing this bundling aggregation, otherwise it will be very difficult to compete with these streamers. Thank you very much. I told you very quickly, but I cannot wait to hear what Jonathan has to say, and then we will discuss in Q&A questions you may have. Jonathan?
Thank you very much. Okay. Excellent. I'm hoping everyone can see that now.
Yes.
Perfect. So thanks very much, Maria. It's a really nice intro. I'm Jonathan Broughton. I'm research director at Plum. We are the original measurement company for streaming services. So we provide a lot of audience data, but also some much deeper insights in terms of what consumers are doing on platforms, what's working, and what's not in the content space. Really nice you finished on the partnership with Sky and Warner, because that's exactly where I'm starting. It's almost as if we planned it. So Sky and Warner, it kind of goes without saying that Sky and Warner, or Sky and HBO, have a really long history of cooperation and collaboration, which extends from distribution all the way through to co-production and co-funding of content. So with HBO sort of moving away to do some of its own thing, obviously some ties here have been broken, but not all of them. Some distribution remains, and of course the bundling, as Maria mentioned. I want to focus on one of the sort of key strategies that has been being carried out as part of the launch of the HBO Max app, alongside continued collaboration with Sky. And this is, of course, the promo poster for Euphoria. Really interestingly with Euphoria, and this is sort of a pattern which will be carried out throughout the next few years, is that new seasons of this show will premiere on Sky, while library content, so seasons 1 and 2, for example, will remain on the Max app. So library content on Max, and what would be considered tentpole titles premiering on Sky. Now, some would question this, and I think it's worth looking at in more detail. It seems a little bit crazy to give away your most important content and keep your older content for yourself. Surely that flies in the face of certainly marketing strategies. And this is what I want to talk about in my first case study. So how important is library versus new releases? How important that is in terms of consumption, and how important is it in perhaps what's actually more important than that today, which is building and retaining your subscriber base as a subscription service. So let's start at the top. Let's talk about what people talk about most, which is those top 10 lists, which I'm sure you check regularly, that are found in many different places. So this is just a given month. It could be any month, but this is top 10 on Max for September 2025. And if we look at these, you can see that around half of these are new titles. They were released in the previous 6 months, or for most of these, in fact, they were released in the previous 2 or 3 months. And you can see in those top 10s what's drawing the majority of viewing right at the top. So big titles generating lots of views and lots of buzz. It is true that the majority of this is new content. So around 3/4 of hours of consumption taking place on stuff which is fresh to the platform. But that's just what's going on at the top. If we actually look at the full catalogue, the picture is very, very different. If you look at availability by number of titles, around 85% of anything that's being consumed on a platform, and this is fairly consistent. This could be Netflix, this could be Max, this could be Amazon. The majority of titles that are available tend to be older. They weren't released that year, or they're more than 6 months old. And it's even more stark if you then look at what's actually being consumed. So again, more than 3/4 of all hours of consumption on a streaming platform tends to be older content. So it's that which is sating viewers' interest. It's that people are watching day in, day out. And in fact, newer content makes up a much, much smaller proportion of that, despite the attention that we all feel, or the excitement we feel when new series are released. There's a further question to this, which is how much does it matter? So how much is content that's older just keeping people ticking along? How much is what's actually stopping them leaving the platform? And that's actually what's bringing them to the platform in the first place. So what's causing subscription and what's reducing churn? And we have a measurement of that. We call it reactivation. And it's something we look at which assigns points to shows that people watch when they join a service. And also those who haven't been very active on the service, what is bringing them back? What's renewing their interest? And again, if we look at the top titles in this, so this is a top 20 view, we can see that around half of the titles by number are new content in green, and the rest of them are actually older. Really interesting, you see things like Peacemaker. Season 2 of Peacemaker, which is the new season in September, is of course the most watched or the most reactivated title on the platform. But you do see there in third place Peacemaker Season 1, which at this point is almost 3 years old. It's not new at all. So this is people seeing Peacemaker releasing on the platform and going back and either watching for the first time library content, or in fact watching again, so they can then catch up refreshed on the new season. And again, this is something we can look at in terms of overall points at the top of the pie, and also further down for the full catalogue. So if we look at what's new in that top 10, yes, it's around 2/3 of all kind of reactivation points. So that's stuff which is keeping people on the platform. This is what's most talked about. But what's actually going on is on the right. So again, 80% of those reactivation points that we've generated look at not new content. So for the vast majority of users as a platform, what's actually keeping them coming back to the platform, what's stopping them churning, isn't new content. It's older content. New content grabs headlines and does have a really big role in acquiring new subscribers. But what stops the company from failing, what keeps people on the platform, is older content. And again, this goes back to Euphoria. So final point on that, what is this content and what's the difference in it? And we can also look at this in terms of genres. So this is the same reactivation data. This is telling us what's important to keep subscribers on a platform. We could split it up by genre. And there are two kind of key segments which are quite important to have fresh content for. And this is action and this is documentary. This is where it's vastly more valuable to have new titles in action and documentary for a couple of reasons. One is spoilers. Nobody likes having content spoiled. These tend to be a little bit more zeitgeisty. So these are the kind of things that people talk about with each other. Whereas for every single other genre, animation, comedy, and most importantly for Euphoria, drama, it tends to be library content, which is actually providing that reactivation power, which is keeping people from churning and keeping them on the platform. So go back to the Euphoria deal. Again, at first glance, it flies in the face a little bit of common strategy, which is keep your fresh content for yourself. But in actual fact, it's more important to keep library content in this particular case. So using Sky as a bit of a funnel, again, with that wonderful bundling deal that they've just made. And in fact, keeping users on the platform using library drama, library animation, and library comedy. Second case study I've got for you today is that around release strategy. So it's very fragmented at the moment, but there is some sort of clear clues about what actually works coming to the front. So if you come from a sort of linear TV background, this is the kind of strategy that you dealt with in the past. You'd have an audience which you understood in terms of demographics. You understood they had various need states. They want to be excited, they want to be entertained, they want to be educated, etc. And then you could split that into sort of various genres to actually make your content and ensure that you're hitting the breadth and depth of your audience. Now it's a little bit more complicated than that. Not only do you have to focus on what's available, but you also have to think about timing. So how is a season drop going to differ from an episodic release? How is your audience going to respond to that? How can you get the most value from your content? And roughly we see this now divided into sort of 3 distinct patterns. So season drop, the whole thing drops at the same time. Dropping in parts, so you have a single season, but maybe there's a break in the middle, or an episodic release, which is sort of the classic linear weekly drop. And what we tend to see is that sort of licensed content all gets dumped on the platform at the same time. Super premium originals tend to be a sort of episodic weekly release, while part drops as a mix of either very deliberate, fairly expensive content, which you want to draw out for a little bit, or stuff which is actually just having a really horrible time in production and the later part isn't ready. And there are some problems with all of these approaches, and also some benefits. A season drop, yes, does provide a huge amount of content for your audience to binge through, but it's not very good at maintaining hype. So if it's something new, it will burn very brightly for a very short amount of time, and then your subscribers will forget about it and potentially churn and go somewhere else. Episodic release does allow that kind of hype to be dragged out over a much longer period, but there do seem to be evidence of especially in sort of slightly slower seasons, mid-season drop-off, the audience is getting bored that they haven't completed the story arc. Finally, drop-in parts does have some benefits of both. You do get a bit of that buzz, you do get an extended hype window, but you can also see frustrated binge viewers and users who want to complete the story actually dropping off again halfway through. So it's best of both worlds and worst of both worlds at the same time. And we can look at a bit of evidence of that if we actually dive into a couple of shows. So You is a fantastic example of this. They've deployed multiple different strategies over the years. They've deployed this to Netflix. So season 4 is the important one here, which was split into 2 parts. So 5 episodes, having a month to wait to see what happens afterwards. And if we track the audience over time, you can see in red exactly what happens here. So seasons 1, 2, and 3, a nice sort of normal build-up of what's going on there, very typical of any sort of modern single drop use. You have a steady build-up over the first couple of weeks, and then a long tail going out from that. Season 4 effectively lost its audience halfway through. So as soon as audiences worked out, they couldn't watch the entire thing. There was a drop in aggregated hours of consumption. So right at the start, you've got those binge viewers who aren't able to complete their whole series. And a lot of them actually don't wait to complete it. So when season 2 drops, we've never regained those subscribers. They've got frustrated that they couldn't watch the whole thing, and they've never come back. And that has a permanent effect on the the series as a whole. Season 5 never regained the audience which was lost from seasons 1 and 2. An example of success where this has been done well is looking at Loki. So actually tapping into that kind of hype, that zeitgeist, that kind of want to engage in all content as soon as possible. So this was a weekly release, and in fact remained a weekly release. But this just goes to show how important timing is in a streaming environment. So for season 1, which is in pink here, what's effectively happening is this is being deployed on the streaming platform the day after it's aired live. And not only do you not see, do you not capture some of that audience. You also see quite a lot of frustrated viewers who want to watch this on streaming, but it's been spoiled by spoilers on sort of social media and media write-ups, etc., etc. Season 2 does much better. So it's returned to something which is more like a simulcast. So at the same time, or even slightly before what's going on linear. And we see an aggregated audience across linear and streaming, which is greater than it was for season 1. So great success, understanding the audience, understanding their frustration, and getting the timing right. So final segment for me, what happens when things move? So streaming's been around for quite a while now. And there are a lot of shows which have moved from one platform to another. So why does that happen? And actually what happens? Are we reusing audience? Are we finding new things? And there's a couple of different things that happen during that. In the past, this basically never happened. In the past, everything was ring fenced and stuff stayed on one platform. COVID destroyed everything. And what we find now is a much more fluid approach. Some content moves, some content finds new audiences, but there are not those hard walls we found in the past. I'll whiz through this, just conscious a little bit of time.
Yes, we have 4 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. If we look at something like Schitt's Creek, you can see this title, not really finding a huge home for itself on Netflix. And when it moves to Hulu, although overall these numbers do look lower, it's much more prominent within the platform itself. So on Netflix, this appeared sort of 100, 150 in the rankings. When it moved to Schitt's Creek, which is a much more sort of specialized service with people actually understanding a little bit more about what's there, it was an expected show. So audiences were looking for it, they found it, and it was consistently in the top 20s and occasionally in the top 10s. So finding the right home for your content is pretty important. Sometimes that's not true at all. Sometimes the opposite is true. So this is Sex and the City going the other way. So on HBO Max, not finding a huge home, not really a Max type title, a little bit too entertainment, not enough premium drama. Finding its home on Netflix had the complete opposite effect. A big push when it moves to the platform and finding an audience which actually expects to see this kind of content and hundreds of hours of consumption. Finally, sometimes you just need a fresh start. So this is Insecure on HBO Max, which strangely was a title which should have done quite well, but basically found no traction, no audience, and no hours of consumption. Relaunching on Netflix, finding a new audience, relaunching that kind of social buzz you get with the launch of any new title, actually found amazing success. So a lot of viewers tuning this in the first time, despite the fact it had been, this title is a year old by the time it launches. So sometimes if your content's not doing very well, moving to a new home and finding a new audience really helps with finding success. And with that, I'll pass back to Maria.
Well, great. Thank you, Jonathan, because we have now 1 minute. So, exactly. But let's go to the point. You have a question from the audience regarding the series You. Season 1 through season 3, stronger storylines. Did Netflix lose audience because of how they dropped the series or because of the quality? What happened with You?
Yeah, I'd say both. I'd say that you're absolutely right. There was a bit of repetition in the storylines, which were getting a little bit samey. But it is also you do see a clear consequence of that kind of split season, people just not bothering to show up. Yeah, quality matters. Quality always matters, and you are right. It does decline a little bit. But it's also true that there's strong evidence that splitting into parts had a vastly detrimental effect on it.
And then there is a question that is today very hot topic about the Sky bundle. Is this really good for value? The person anonymous says here, I guess no. Is easy for payment? Yes. But as I will need to upgrade each subscription, it's not a good value. So you can give your view and I can give mine. What do you think about the announcement today? Sky bundling, Netflix, HBO, Disney.
So if I answer it from like the consumer perspective, I think I don't think the bundle is amazing value. I think it looks good value at first glance. I think Heyu is very specialized, so you can sort of discount that from a proper bundle. With the three remaining services, I think you save something like £6 to £8 a month if you subscribe to that bundle rather than taking each individually. But I think there are two problems with it. I think one is that the overlap between those three services isn't that great, and I think Maria, you probably got some really good data on that. I think the other kind of point to make there is that people lose the flexibility of hopping between streams, which we know happens an awful lot. So people don't take, outside Netflix especially, people don't necessarily take a year-long subscription. They'll bounce backwards and forwards, and it removes people's ability to do that. And I always think consumers are a little bit lazy, but they are quite savvy about where they can save money. Yeah.
I think I agree with you, Jonathan. Obviously, I think it's a must. Sky needed to make this announcement because after HBO saying they're launching directly to consumer, then obviously the threat will be people subscribing to Netflix, to HBO, and not needing Sky anymore. So I think Sky needs to be aggressive. They need to do a good bundle. But I agree with the audience. It needs to be enough savings to make it worthwhile for consumers to take all this bundle with all these services. But I am aware we are now 1 minute extra time, Karen. Probably we'll need another webinar to discuss about what is happening with bundling, what is happening with microdramas. I'm curious to see if anyone in the audience are watching microdramas themselves, but so many topics, bundling, microdramas. Jonathan, the library content was fascinating, how important it is, and explains why Netflix is desperate to buy HBO, so it's paramount.
I agree with you. I think your thinking on microdramas is spot on. I think they're going to be a lot bigger. I think they're going to be a lot bigger than people realize. I think they've got amazing utility as well. They're so flexible. I really like the way the creative approach within the strategy of microdramas, seeing them used in multiple means as pipeline and to reward kind of loyal customers at the same time. It's nice to see creatives playing with the format as well. I think they're going to be really big this year.
I agree with you. And also I found funny when people say scrap content. Have you watched anything? No. So how people know is scrap if they haven't watched it or experienced themselves. So when you criticize something, at least pay attention with what it is. Test it yourself before saying it's scrap. And if you think it's scrap, what is the definition of scrap? Because let's face it, a lot of content in YouTube can be under that category of crap. But what is crap for some is wonderful to others. So again, crap is a very strange word used today too often. But Karen, I think we have to do another microdrama series to follow up with all the questions because we don't have time. I hope you and everyone in the audience enjoy. And they can follow up with questions, ask us for the decks, to me and Jonathan. But anything to add, Karen?
No, I think it was perfect. I think it was fascinating. And I think we could have carried on until 11 o'clock tonight. Couldn't we, really? Unfortunately, we can't. Next time, let's do one on microdramas. And let's do 45 minutes.
Perfect.
And then, but as Maria just said, if anybody has any questions, email them over to info@ctameurope.com. We'll forward them to Maria and Jonathan. And if you want to see the decks, then just request them and we'll sort it out. Thank you very much. Fabulous as always. And let's get another one in the diary soon.
Perfect.
Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gracias, Maria. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.